ship was able to freeze global trade.
We want love, we want peace, we want equality!
There are
A traditional recipe, and it's really very delicious.
WION, now available on Spotify and Google Podcast.
Vielleicht nur als 5%.
There are many other. This is right, Arab.
Hello and welcome to this WION Live Broadcast from Washington, DC. Fisher, and in this bulletin, we'll bring you a roundup on stories developing around the world. First up, the headlines. The US announces the release of crude oil from its emergency stockpile as part of a plan it hashed out with China, India, Japan, South Korea and the UK to lower soaring fuel prices. Russia's spy agency dismisses growing Western claims that Moscow is planning to invade Ukraine after US intelligence showed a buildup of Russian troops near the Ukraine border. Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko warns of a war if the migrant crisis deteriorates too far, but he says he does not seek confrontation with Poland. Germany mulls further restrictions to contain a dramatic surge in the coronavirus as the United States advises against travel there. India logs its lowest COVID-19 tally in more than 500 days as the nation reports just over 7,500 coronavirus infections and 236 COVID deaths in the last 24 hours. Amid international backlash over tennis star Peng Shuai's whereabouts, China says the case is being maliciously hyped up and politicised by some people. The Biden administration has announced the release of America's strategic oil reserves. But the US is not alone here. Joining Washington is India, Japan, South Korea, China and the UK in a coordinated release of oil stockpiles to clamp down on the soaring oil prices across the globe. The United States is releasing almost 50 million barrels from its strategic reserves. India, too, is releasing 5 million barrels. Mr. Biden calls it a move to lower energy and gas prices, but many are even looking at it as a direct challenge to the OPEC Plus. That's the Organisation of the Petroleum Exporting Countries Plus, which is a loosely affiliated entity consisting of the 13 OPEC members and 10 of the world's major non-OPEC oil exporting nations. For days, the US has wanted the oil cartel to pump more oil to address concerns of soaring fuel prices. The Biden administration urged OPEC and its allies like Russia to accelerate production to keep up with rebounding global economies. So, after the oil cartel refused to pay heed to their pleas, the Biden administration hatched a different plan. The idea is to keep pressuring OPEC Plus, and for that, the United States has roped in its longtime allies. The US is working with the Paris-based International Energy Administration. It's a bloc of 30 industrialized energy-consuming nations. Japan and South Korea are both IEA members, while China and India are only associate members. These countries and the US are the world's 5 largest oil importers, so the move could act as a powerful signal. The decision is about consumer nation unity on global energy prices. Once the stocks are released, it could drive prices lower, even if it happens for just a short term. Residents of Waukesha, a small Midwestern city in the US, are struggling to come to terms with the events of Sunday, when a car rammed into the crowd at a Christmas parade, killing 5 and leaving more than 48 others injured. The suspect has been identified as Darrell Brooks, and he will be charged with 5 counts of intentional homicide. Wisconsin police say the 39-year-old was apparently fleeing a domestic disturbance just before he ran his car into the parade. The accused will have his first appearance in court today. Police confirmed that while the motive was not yet clear, there was no evidence that this was a terror incident.
We have information that the suspect prior to the incident was involved in a domestic disturbance, which was just minutes prior, and the suspect left that scene just prior to our arrival to that domestic disturbance.
US media have reported that the suspect is from the city of Milwaukee, where he already faces multiple charges from last year for recklessly endangering the safety of others, as well as from earlier this month for a domestic abuse incident. 4 women and 1 man between the ages of 52 and 81 have died, and 48 people remain hospitalised. Among them are 18 children, several of whom are in a critical condition. There are fears that the death toll might rise. Residents of the city are trying to come to terms with the senseless tragedy.
I mean, obviously a little shaken by it all, a little distraught. My kids, I actually was going to be down here. I had a sick kid at home. So I had other kids, my partner's kids were right in front. That was her dance team. Some of them that got hit.
Still feeling pretty shaken up, just in shock of what happened yesterday. That was the last thing we expected going to the holiday parade yesterday. As I was saying, we were really looking forward to the celebration and being part of it and watching it as well. So less than 24 hours later, still feeling pretty raw and trying to process.
Well, we don't have all the facts and details yet. We know this morning that 5 families in Waukesha are facing fresh grief. This morning, Jill and I and the entire Biden family, and I'm sure all of us, pray that that same spirit's going to embrace and lift up all the victims of this tragedy, bringing comfort to those recovering from the injuries, and wrapping the families of those who died in the support of their community.
One World Trade Center that is the one where the impact.
The cause of India's freedom for many years.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr.
America is a constant work in progress.
Connected with the world through WION. Like the page on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter for new alerts. Instagram for videos and images. And the website for the latest news, views, and analysis. WIONews.com. World is one.
WION, India's global voice. The channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Joe Biden, now the 46th president of the United States, has a full plate in front of him.
Afghanistan has been the heart of American military power.
In a clear warning to China, India's military has now taken control of the country for 1 year.
Made it concerned. It says that it's likely to miss by that.
What was happening inside the virology lab in Wuhan?
One ship was able to freeze global trade.
We want love, we want peace, we want equality!
There are
A traditional recipe, and it's really very delicious.
Now to Afghanistan. As the Taliban took over Kabul, thousands of Afghans flocked to the airport attempting to flee. The world witnessed the desperation of many Afghan families to escape Taliban rule. Many children were separated from their parents after they were passed across barbed wires to American forces inside the airport. One of them was 18-month-old Farzad. After weeks of separation, Farzad has now been reunited with his mother. His father, who stayed back in Kabul to look for him, is still hoping to flee Afghanistan.
The father of 18-month-old Farzad worked for the U.S. Embassy in Kabul. After the Taliban took over Afghanistan, Farzad's family raced to Kabul airport in hopes of being evacuated from the country.
Since my husband's life was in danger, we left our house and headed to the airport because we heard that Americans were evacuating people who worked with them.
U.S. Marines moved the children inside the airport to shelter them from the high heat and the huge crowds at the gates. Farzad's uncle Ahmad Zawarzada, who was also trying to get his family out, says Farzad was one of the children lifted over barbed wire.
The Marines asked us to give them our children so that they moved them to the other side of the gate in the airport. We handed them 3 of our family's children.
The two families entered the airport 3 hours later and were reunited with 2 of the 3 children. But baby Farzad was nowhere to be seen.
After 3 hours of trying to get in, we finally succeeded. After searching for the kids, we found 2 of them. One of them was my little daughter, and the other one was my niece. But despite efforts, we failed to find the 3rd child.
Farzad's father went back outside the airport looking for his son.
When we lost our son in the airport, my husband left the airport to look for him. He would show my son's photo to everyone, hoping to find him. My husband stayed back to search for my son.
The 2 families made it out of Afghanistan to a camp in Qatar, leaving a father in search for his son in Kabul, an irony that still puzzles Wahida.
We were leaving my country because my husband's life was in danger. But at the end, it was my husband who stayed back and my son disappeared. Farzad's father is still at risk in Afghanistan.
For 17 days, the 18-year-old mother did not know her son's whereabouts or well-being.
I was feeling as if I were dead too. It's very difficult for a mother.
That all changed in a Qatari camp when the family received a message.
We hadn't been in communication with anyone in those 2 weeks. After 15 days, when I connected to the newly installed Wi-Fi in the camp, the first message that I noticed was from some folks in Norway. Their message said that Farzad was with them. We were relieved and thankful as they became Farzad's temporary parents.
Farzad stayed in Norway for 43 days while his mother was shifted to a camp in the U.S.
After we arrived in a refugee camp in the U.S., they transported our son from Norway. After confirming he was my child through a DNA test, they gave me my child.
The family resides in Richmond, Virginia, and are now praying for a reunion with Farzad's father, who is still in Kabul, hoping to be evacuated by the U.S. He requested his identity be kept secret for his safety.
I thank the U.S. for reuniting my son with his mother. I miss them a lot and request the U.S. government to include me in this process of evacuation. My family needs me, and I need my family.
For Noshaba Ashna in Richmond, Virginia, Bejan Hamdard, VOA News.
Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service has dismissed growing Western concerns that Moscow is planning to invade Ukraine. In a rare statement, Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service said that the Americans are painting a frightening picture of Russian tanks that will start crushing Ukrainian cities, and that the US was scaring the global community. It also added that the US was sending its allies false information on concentration forces. This denial comes after Western countries raised alarm over increased Russian military activity near Ukraine. The Kremlin's accused the West of leading an information campaign to escalate tensions in the region.
What is happening now in the world's diplomacy had never happened before. That's why a lot of slyness, desperate to explain something, and against the backdrop of public accusation of Moscow inaction, such a stunning step has been made. Yes, it's unconventional for diplomacy, but from the other side, such unconventionally sly situation requires unconventionally decisive actions. Ukraine likely pursued military solution of their problem to create one more disaster for themselves and everyone in Europe. This is what Ukraine tends to achieve, and it is trying to achieve it under the shelter of NATO exercise. NATO ship in the Black Sea, British soldiers in the region with numbers increasing. That is what Ukraine wants to achieve. And this is, of course, heartbreaking because this will entail serious consequences.
Well, President Putin brought up the issue during a call with Italy's Prime Minister Mario Draghi. According to a Kremlin transcript, Vladimir Putin discussed provocative steps taken by Ukraine in aggravating the situation. This after Ukraine used Turkish-made drones against pro-Moscow rebels. Putin has also voiced concerns about the rising US presence in the Black Sea. Last week, he said that the West was escalating the conflict by holding drills in the Black Sea. Meanwhile, Ukraine is on high alert. Its airborne troops conducted drills near the capital, Kiev. The drills simulated the landing of troops and armoured personnel carriers for an attack on an enemy target. Ukraine has been locked in an ongoing, simmering conflict with pro-Russia separatists in regions bordering Russia since 2014. Kiev and its Western allies accuse Russia of sending troops and arms across the border to support the separatists, a claim that Moscow denies. What began as a peaceful uprising against in Syria nearly 10 years ago turned into a full-scale civil war. More than 380,000 people have died. Today, the country is facing a humanitarian crisis, with children as young as 12 taking up jobs and working in hazardous conditions to support their families and to put food on the table. Our next report tells you more.
These visuals are hard to watch. This is 12-year-old Amir. He is carrying a bag full of coal to the edge of a water reservoir. Amir belongs inside a classroom, but he has been forced to work at an oil refinery near Al-Bab to support his family. The war in Syria has destroyed his future prospects.
My name is Amar Al-Shaiban and we fled 8 years ago. I work here at the oil refinery to support my family. 4 of my siblings were killed by the regime. We have debts, so I have to work here. It's not in my hands. I'm not going to school and don't want my siblings to work. I work summers and winters in the refinery to support my parents.
Another young boy, Muhammad, works at a scrapyard. The 15-year-old orphan has been working since the age of 9 for a basic foundry where he helps melt metal and breathes in toxic black fumes daily. There are more heartbreaking stories such as these. Children forced out of rooms and into jobs involving dangerous working conditions. According to the UNICEF, an estimated 2.5 million children in Syria are out of school, with another 1.6 million at the risk of dropping out. Is the primary reason for this, with many children as young as 7 recruited to fight in Syria's decade-long conflict.
It's been 2 years that I don't go to school and I work here shop welding with a blowtorch. So I'm absent from school for 2 years now. In 3 years, I've learned how to work at the blacksmith. Every week, I earn 60 liras, which goes towards the household expenses.
These young teens are taking up jobs to prevent their younger siblings from suffering a similar fate. While there is no official data on child labor rates in Syria, the pandemic has worsened the economic crisis in the country. Statistics show that 9 out of 10 children in Syria live in poverty. In more heartbreaking accounts, while some children dream of returning to classrooms one day, others have given up on their dreams altogether.
I dream of carrying a pen and a notebook and going to school. That is better than the furnaces, diesel, and the smell. I dream to play with my friends at school, to study like the others, to learn. But it's been 4 years now that I work at the oil refinery.
Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Back here to Washington now, and US First Lady Jill Biden had the holiday season at the White House by receiving the official 2021 White House Christmas tree. It's an 18.5-foot Fraser fir from North Carolina. It's definitely beginning to look a lot like Christmas here in DC. We'll leave you with these visuals. Thanks for watching, and for more global news and updates, stay tuned to WION World is One.
How do you like the tree, Madam First Lady? It's beautiful. It's magnificent, actually. So good. Thank you.
Happy holidays. Have a great Thanksgiving. I'll see you next week when we do the Christmas reveal. Be safe. Have a happy, healthy holiday. Thank you.
How was the birthday celebration?
Hey, thanks for coming.
There are many other...
This is right, Arab.
WION, now available on Spotify and Google Podcast.
One World Trade Center, that is the one where the impact.
The cause of India's freedom for many years.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr.
America is a constant work